Hi there, and welcome to our Elder Law Report. I'm Jane Deere-Wester with McIntyre Elder Law. I'm based in our Hendersonville office, and I'm joined today by Jordan McIntyre in our Shelby office. Hi, Jordan.
Hey, Jane.
Hey, today we are here to talk about ways to protect your inheritance and your assets from creditors and lawsuits. I am in our litigation division. I do full-time litigation here for our firm across the state. And one question I get quite often from clients as we're doing their estate planning documents is, I want you to put these documents together in such a way that nobody can ever contest it and nobody can ever have a litigation case coming out of my estate. And I apologize for kind of snickering while I'm saying that, but there is no such thing as a litigation-proof estate plan or a litigation-proof life, right? So I want to come out and say that first. There's no hard and fast way to completely avoid litigation on the front end, because attorneys, we're creative. We come up with arguments you might not think about at the front end. So there is no such thing as a fail-safe to absolutely avoid litigation. But of course, in our process, there are ways to make it harder to litigate. There are ways to make litigation less of a option, or doesn't look like as good of an option, because we word our documents in such a way to be very clear. We always advise our clients to speak with their family members as they're going through the estate planning process, so people know and hear directly from you, hey, I just got my estate plan done. I want you to be my agent under the power of attorney. When I go, I'm going to leave things split evenly between my children. Sometimes it's not so easy, right? Sometimes it's not so easy. But having that communication is key and can be a key factor in avoiding some litigation. So today, Jordan and I are going to talk about really 4 different topics or areas that we use as estate planning attorneys and as litigators to help you avoid claims and litigation over inheritance and over your asset. So these 4 items I'll introduce briefly are trusts and estate planning documents, a good solid estate plan, having beneficiary designations. Third is business entity protection, so creating business entities as a way to protect your assets. And also, number 4, prenuptial agreements as a way between married couples to be very clear about properties that you may want to remain separate properties versus those properties that you may want to be considered marital properties. Prenups come in extremely handy and are very important, particularly in blended family dynamics, which we see a lot of these days. So I'll pause there and maybe let Jordan start out on number 1, which is just about having a solid estate plan and or trust in place to, again, try to avoid litigation.
Yeah, so that was a great intro, Jane. So regardless of the route you try to go, typically at McIntyre Elder Law, we're going to suggest getting out assets outside of probate or using some type of trust to do that. You want to have an estate plan in place that is difficult to challenge, right? We don't want to draft a document for you that has any type of ambiguous language. You want to have clear distributions to beneficiaries, and then have individuals, right, that you trust to actually do that, whether it's a trustee or an executor. And yeah, so with the revocable living trust, you're going to be able to avoid probate. You can control how and when assets are distributed. And here we're going to have no contest provisions within these documents to try to avoid litigation, meaning that if a beneficiary does not have a good faith basis to contest, I guess, the drafting of this document, then they're going to be cut out of that. And that can be in a will or a trust. Additionally, you can use spendthrift provisions within trust if you want to try to protect a child from any lawsuits they may have or bankruptcy, right? Splinter provisions can make it more difficult for creditors to actually get assets from the trust. If you want to try to shield assets from any type of long-term care costs, right? You're worried about qualifying for some type of benefit and then your estate being responsible for that. You can use a revocable trust, right? That's a way to shield assets. But essentially, trust can give you control, flexibility, and protection. And then we can try to avoid any type of litigation, right? By doing proper planning. So I think Jane's going to go in to talk about beneficiary designations and how that's pretty, foolproof to avoid litigation by just naming a beneficiary on an account.
Yeah, thank you, Jordan. And that's true. That's a perfect segue into beneficiary designations. And let me be very clear. This is something you can do in most cases without the assistance of an attorney. So this is a freebie for y'all listening. These are things you can take action and do today that you do not have to have an attorney involved. Call your bank account. Your bank, your financial advisor, make sure you have payable on death beneficiaries designated on every single one of your bank accounts. Let me use myself as an example. About a year ago, I found out that my ex-husband, who has been my ex-husband for over 10 years, was still listed as a payable on death beneficiary on one of my bank accounts. Of course, I've since changed that, but don't make the same mistake. Often going through a divorce or some other business dissolution, we forget to go back and check all of our accounts, especially those accounts we've had a really long time. We think we did it at the beginning, but now's as good a time as any. Go back and check those bank accounts. This includes, checking, savings, money market, IRAs, 401ks, life insurance. Check your beneficiaries and your life insurance. And just to build on what Jordan was saying in the estate planning and trust document planning, you can name your trust as the beneficiary of your life insurance policy. This is the way the Rockefeller family really built a lot of generational wealth, was all the family members made their life insurance policies payable into the big Rockefeller trust. And this is how they built on generational wealth. So again, those beneficiary designations are so important. You don't have to pay anyone, not an attorney or anyone else, to make those. The tough thing is you just have to prioritize it and make sure you actually do it. So that's a really easy one that you can do yourself. And I will ping back to Jordan to talk about creating business entities like LLCs or family limited partnerships to continue to shield assets, or even your small, medium, large businesses.
Yeah, so using a limited liability company, right, an LLC, or even those professional limited liability corporations, is a great way to separate your personal wealth from any type of potential claims, right? Let's say you have some land or rental property, someone slips and falls on that property, your entire estate could be at risk if you don't have it in some type of business. Additionally, here at McIntyre Elder Law, we'll put LLCs into trust to keep everything, aligned with the estate plan and avoid probate to ensure that this business is not halted. So if you have an LLC that goes through probate, it can really halt business operations, and you want some type of succession plan in place. Whether you have that within the operating agreement and the LLC, I would recommend that people put that LLC into the trust. They get additional liability, protection, like a Russian nesting doll, and then we can have some type of succession plan in place to ensure that the LLC is still run even after the owner passes, right? So you just don't want to have assets in your own name if you're worried about liability and you want to try to limit, right, I guess, how much people can recover from you. If you have things in the LLC, they're only going to go after things in the LLC, not your personal assets. So if you've got multiple rental properties or small businesses, try to place them into those LLCs and maybe into a trust in order to limit your liability. And then I think Jane's going to go into some prenup agreements. Those are incredibly important, and they're not just for celebrities.
Yeah. Isn't that the truth?
Yeah.
We were just talking about this before coming on to the meeting, the recording here, and prenuptial agreements, we see more and more often people are on their second, third, fourth, 10th marriage, and blended families are just such a common occurrence these days where someone has been married before, now they're getting remarried, they may have children from their past marriage and then new children with the current wife, and there are just so many issues. So we are not family law attorneys, but we work in conjunction with some excellent family law attorneys across Western North Carolina and all the way over to Charlotte. And we want to work in conjunction, not only with your family law attorneys, but also with other professionals like your accountants, your financial planners. But having that prenuptial agreement, or if you missed the boat on that, maybe a postnuptial agreement in place to determine what is separate property. What about that property you inherited from your grandfather? Do you want that to stay in your sole and separate name so you can pass it on to your biological children? Or do you want your spouse to have a share in that? All these things are sometimes a tough discussion, but they are so much easier to have on the front end than on the back end in litigation. So setting yourself up with a prenuptial or postnuptial agreement is just pivotal to protecting your assets and securing your legacy so that you know what's going to happen. I think with anything, with all of these four modalities, you're educating yourself in a way to know what's going to happen if you're either incapacitated or when you pass away. So the incapacitations and if the pass away is a win, right? We don't know of any way to keep anybody alive forever. So that is something all of us eventually are going to have to deal with. So having a solid estate plan in place and really educating yourself on what happens to stuff, your business, your money, your real estate, they're all treated a little bit differently. So just having the knowledge is incredibly empowering. And we just encourage you all to take the next step after watching this video. Give our offices a call. We have offices in Hendersonville, Shelby, and Charlotte. We're here to serve our fellow North Carolinians and get our estate plans in place and help you secure your legacies for future generations. Anything else, Jordan? Anything else I missed there?
I think I just want to emphasize, right? You don't build this legacy overnight. You spend your entire life working, saving, investing, forming businesses, buying properties. So make sure you have protections in place, whether you do it yourself or through an attorney, to not let your legacy disappear. Litigation's not overnight, but you could lose everything pretty quickly if it's not protected, and there's always liability out there. You never know what's going to happen. So just make sure you protect yourself, and we can do that for you here.
That's right. That's right. Thanks again for joining us today. Please, if you have any questions, please check out our website at www.mcelderlaw.com. And we look forward to assisting you and seeing y'all in the office soon. Thanks, Jordan.
Thank you, Jane.
Bye.
Bye.